Big breaking political news out of Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz, who of course was the Democratic nominee for vice president in 2024, has ended his re-election bid for governor. He is not going to run for re-election. This comes as pressure has been growing around this widening welfare fraud scandal. Now, Walz has not been accused of any wrongdoing, but it has been a growing political headache. Let's get right to CNN Chief National Affairs Correspondent Jeff Zeleny. This is a wow this morning, or at least would have been if you had said it was going to happen, 2 or 3 months ago?
That's right, John. Good morning. Even perhaps 2 or 3 weeks ago, the reality is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had been insistent on running for a third term, which would have been unprecedented in and of itself. Minnesota has not elected a governor for 3 consecutive terms, but it is that deepening federal probe as well as this widening scandal. As you said, he is not implicated in this at all. This is actually somewhat old news in Minnesota. This has been going on for years and years. The prosecution started back during the Biden administration, but over the holidays, it certainly did widen. There was a right-wing influencer who posted a viral video on social media that quite literally went viral when the vice president of the United States and the FBI director leaned in on this, and it shined a brighter spotlight on really what had been some deep concerns among Minnesota Democrats, even about the wisdom of Governor Walz seeking a third term. They believe that this would hang over the entire re-election effort and perhaps even damage the Democratic Party, even though there is no suggestion that there was wrongdoing. However, this widening scandal happened on his watch, but we are getting his reasoning in a new statement this morning that's ahead of a news conference he's scheduled to hold in just a few hours. And let's take a look at one small portion of this, if we can, John. The governor writes this. He said, "As I reflected on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute I spent defending my own political interests would be a minute I can spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences." And the governor goes on.
My thing is, how are you not able to see what was going on under your own party in your own state? It's not like you have to watch over 50 states and you're worried about other nations, right? You're responsible for what's going on in the state of Minnesota. There's no argument about that. So you're telling me your own people under you were pulling the wool over your eyes? That's very hard to believe. It's very hard to believe that you didn't even know any of this fraud was going on. You didn't notice a dollar was missing? Y'all, I'm not sure how much research you've done, but there has been almost the equivalent amount of money that Somali is worth, their GDP, which means their market value, meaning how valuable they are to the United States. There has been so much fraud in Minnesota that the GDP, I think it's like 9 billion. It's almost been 9 billion, almost $9 billion in fraud and taxpayer fraud in Minnesota alone. Now, if it's happening in Minnesota, you know it's happening in almost a lot of states. I can't say every state, but in a lot of states. How has Tim Walz missed out on almost $9 billion of taxpayer fraud? It just doesn't make sense. You live in the state of Minnesota. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think this is a complete lie to cover his ass. And I think it's something to make it seem like he wasn't a part of it. You don't have to have fraud money in order for you to be part of it. You just had to know about it. I think he's playing innocent. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below.
On in quite a lengthy statement, which we expect him to read at that news conference, which is going to be happening at 11 a.m. in St. Paul, Minnesota. He goes on to take direct aim at President Donald Trump and allies of the president and Republican allies who have sought to make political hay out of this, if you will. Of course, they have a lot of this fraud is coming from some leaders of the Somali population in Minneapolis and Minnesota, longstanding members of the community. And the fraud goes back to the COVID time of federal money that was sent to the state of Minnesota, it was simply misused to the tune of the billions. So dozens have already been convicted. But again, the governor is taking direct aim at President Trump over this for politicizing this entire matter.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Like many Minnesotans,
He's
I have
attacking
to tell
Trump
you,
because of it?
I was glad to turn the page on 2025. It was an extraordinarily difficult year for our state, and it ended on a particularly sour note. For the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of this state's generosity. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis. I don't want to mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington and in St. Paul and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people.
Hold on. You guys are the bad guys here. We're not talking about Trump right now. We're talking about what was done in Minnesota. You're a taxpayer. You're probably a taxpayer watching this video. How would you feel if your money was misused and it was a part of a fraud scheme that was allowing these outsiders to come into your state, use your taxpayer dollars you work hard for, and they're out buying resorts, they're out buying pools, Lamborghinis, watches, glasses. These are the things that people were buying with these taxpayer dollars, and these were all luxurious items. It doesn't even matter how they spent it. They're stealing the money. But somehow, Tim Walz here has played the reverse Uno card. You know, yes, there was almost $9 billion in fraud, but Trump is trying to make it seem worse than what it really is. Trump didn't highlight what was going on. It was a YouTuber, a citizen of your state, that started highlighting what these Somalian people were doing in your state, because your people won't be responsible. Your people can't be trusted. So now somehow Trump is just trying to make it seem worse than what it really is. The YouTuber did his job. He understood his work assignment. That's all I'm seeing right now. And it seems like Tim Walz has a big problem with taking responsibility.
Our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in the country to raise a family.
Definitely not the
They've
best.
already begun trying to withhold funds that were meant to help families afford child care. And they have no intention of stopping there. Make no mistake, we should be concerned about fraud in our state government. We cannot affect.
So why weren't you?
Effectively deliver programs and services if we can't earn the public's trust. That's why over the past few years, we've made systemic changes in the way we do business. We've gone to the legislature time and time again to get more tools to combat fraud. We've fired people who weren't doing their jobs. We've seen people go to jail for stealing from our state. We've cut off whole streams of funding in partnership with the federal government.
But so here's my thing. It doesn't matter what you did. What matters is what you allowed to get by. Because you're just stating stuff that you know you did. It's like you're in a relationship with someone, right? Let's say I was in a relationship with a girl, right? And she cheated. And then it's like, well, our first month I didn't cheat. And the second month I didn't cheat. I stayed loyal. But the third month I cheated. It's like you're still a cheater. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be attracted to other guys, but your actions speak louder than your words. And you chose to step out and be unfaithful. Therefore, I'm not going to be with you. I get to say, you know what? I don't want to be with a cheater. You're a cheater. There's nothing you can do to take that back. Your government officials in Minnesota were allowing this. This isn't something that was just done and then they found out about it. They were a part of it as well. The people under Tim Walz, and as far as we know, he could be a part of it too. They swept it under the rug. Fraud happening and being part of the fraud are two different things.
Where we saw widespread criminal activity. We've put new locks on the doors of our remaining programs, and we've hired a new head of program integrity to make sure that those locks can't be broken. All across this state, Minnesotans are hard at work on this problem. Advocates, administrators, investigators are on the front lines defending the integrity of our state's programs, and I want to give a very heartfelt thank you to all of them. There is more to do. A single taxpayer dollar wasted on fraud should be intolerable. And while there's a role to play for everyone, from the legislature to prosecutors to insurance companies to local and county government, the buck does stop with me. My administration has been taking fast, decisive action to solve this crisis. We'll win the fight against the fraudsters. But the political gamesmanship we're seeing from Republicans is only making that fight harder. We've got Republicans here in the state legislature playing hide and seek with potential whistleblowers. We've got conspiracy theorist right-wing YouTubers breaking into our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the President of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors and wrongfully confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on.
I don't care if you think that it's wrongfully taken away, you weren't using it responsibly. It's like a child and a parent. You weren't using it responsibly. You don't deserve it. And if you did use it responsibly, if you didn't let greed take over your actions, right? Then you deserve it. But the thing is, you let your people, well, I can't say he let his people be corrupt, right? Those people were corrupt. They had a price. And obviously we know what their price was, right? They were basically hiring the Somalis to elect them into office. They wanted to stay in office. They wanted their vote, so they paid them fraud money that was paid by taxpayers. And he's sitting here reading a speech explaining why the president is taking away their funds and how it's not right because it helps so many families. Obviously, you got too much money to play with. And if it was helping families, you didn't need that much because you weren't helping the families that you were supposed to be helping with all the money. That money was being spent with people who were committing fraud. That money was being spent with other government employees.
It's disgusting and it's dangerous. Republicans are playing politics with the future of this state. It's shameful. And I've said it before, and I will continue to say it. We welcome ideas from anyone, in any party, from any walk of life, who wants to help us continue to stay ahead of these criminals. And we welcome the involvement of the federal government. I am grateful to the career professionals at the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI who have been helping us fight this fight for years. But I cannot abide the actions of the political leadership in Washington. These opportunists are willing to hurt our people to score cheap points.
Again, here we go. Talking about hurting people, but if your state would have never allowed this to happen, if your government officials in Minnesota never allowed this to happen, you wouldn't be having to say this at all. It's so crazy how grown-ups, grown-ass adults, as old as he is, and I say that in a respectful way, because I know we get a range of age groups on this channel. But I'm pretty sure he has a lot of wisdom in life. And he still has the urge to point the finger about how Washington is highlighting them. You can't be the bad guy and then be dictating how bad everybody else is making you look. You still did it. You had a choice. He's choosing to step down now. You should have chose to step down when you saw the fraud and held people responsible. You can't tell me he did not know that this was happening.
They and their allies have no intention of helping us solve this problem, and every intention of trying to profit off of it.
Imagine being able.
Yeah, I thought he was actually going to give a speech that was more like, there's a lot going on, I'm going to step down. You know, what I did was wrong. I did know about it, and that's obviously he's going to incriminate himself. But honestly, I believe we're going to find out if he was guilty or not. But not this blaming stuff, man. That ain't it. That definitely isn't it. But let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. And make sure you subscribe if you like this type of content.